There you go. It's running now. There's a cat at a fireplace. You did it.
All right, great.
There you go.
Yeah. So you can see me?
Well, not right now. You got to be in front of the camera, but other than that, yeah.
Still going?
Yeah, now I see you. There you go.
All right.
Perfect. Now it looks like you have a giant cat, like, and the cat looks very amused.
This is gonna be great or terrible.
Right. Either way, I'm having fun, and that's the most important thing. That's my goal.
Actually, all that matters. All right. So I think I have a little more coffee.
There you go. I'm on to the real stuff, man. I'm hitting that G Fuel double dose.
Good boy.
I gotta get them vitamins going.
All right, so we're recording, and we just gotta go whenever. All right. You ready?
Yeah, man. I'm always ready.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to Crafted, another edition of Crafted. Start over.
Let's do it.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another very important edition of Crafted, the first edition. Crafted.
Mostly.
I'm here today with Christopher Dugan of Reforged Gaming Lounge. Christopher, how are you?
I am fantastic, and as you can tell by our backgrounds, the world around us is less fantastic.
Yeah, well, mine's a little bit better than yours because
mine's more ominous. That's true. That is true. You have the cute factor there. That is awesome. The cat just randomly moves. Yeah.
You know what I've been thinking? You're in the virtual world, right? I mean, you're in the people don't have a background for Christopher Dugan and what Christopher Dugan does and is and thinks about when he's dreaming. Background.
Nobody wants to know that. But as far as my background goes, so I'm the founder and primary owner of Reforged Gaming Lounge. Reforged Gaming Lounge is pretty much a modern arcade. We combine virtual reality, PC gaming, console gaming, and a community around that and grow those communities. You know, everybody has their favorite, but there's a lot of crossover there. We added the twist of putting a bar in. We were right about to launch before all this went down, which may be a silver lining in that because it's kind of hard to do our business at all without people being able to congregate. And then I've also been in the IT world for over 20 years. I'm currently a systems administrator for a company in Mount Pleasant and was one of the architects for their business continuity plan, which we are now in full execution of. And for an extended period of time, the longest we've ever actually done it. But it seems to be working pretty well. Business is still growing, actually, although slightly from what I've heard, but that's good. So very virtual in a lot of different places. And it's just kind of interesting to see the world adapt to this, like, say, Zoom, for example, like we're using right now. Zoom was a small player up until a month ago.
Right.
Like, legit. They had 10 million users. They now have almost 300 million.
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge thing. And it's interesting to see what's going to happen in the world with this, I think. As we learn more, as people adapt, what the outcome of this is going to be for a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
That's kind of been my background. A lot of people, I've been in quite a lot of conversations virtually, like you have them, with a couple of different industries, telecom, education. And, people are just largely unprepared for this. And they reach out to the person they know the best that says, hey, can you help me try and make sense of this, at least so we can communicate? And, for better or for worse, that happens to be me in a lot of cases. So I've been facilitating that for quite a few people as well, which has been nice. At least it's good that people are getting some, the ability, you're a trusted resource for them, and you can bring them together in a way that they're just uncertain is what I've seen the most.
I think what's awesome about you, when obviously you're one of like the first people I think about whenever because I talk a lot about these points of intersection. You and I have had a lot of conversations like over Mexican food.
Oh yeah.
I've been obsessed with this idea that you've got to intersect the future. And, you talk about Zoom or you talk about you and what you do. I mean, if people didn't appreciate the value of those things before coronavirus, they sure as hell do now. Right. But it's kind of like that whole top of mind mentality. It's, you know what? I'm telling you what I'm doing. I'm telling you it's valuable. I'm telling you this is the future. And I know you don't understand it now, but just wait.
Right. And it just so happens that.
And then coronavirus, but, you
right.
know, coronavirus. So I mean, which is just a fascinating phenomenon because, you know, I've been portending doom for forever. Right. And so, I mean, I kind of feel mentally and emotionally and certainly business wise prepared for this kind of a scenario, but nobody could have been prepared for like the smackdown that is coronavirus. I mean, let's say that the economy was going to go through a lot of the throes that it's going through now, and it would have, right? And there was going to be this kind of uncomfortable transition from that old industrial world, consumer demand driven world to the new world of technology, you know, really driving demand, right? Really laying the path. And so that was going to be uncomfortable to begin with, but now we have just this sudden, I mean, it's just happening at once. And right, it's frightening people, but it's awesome that people know where to turn and who to turn to, and that you're one of those people because you are genuinely one of those people that wants to be of value. You're not trying to like, you know, set people up and sell them. Certainly not, you know, selling snake oil like a lot of these other jackwagons.
Sure. I mean, look, you know, it's always been one of the things here is that when people, you haven't been asked the question, like use one word to describe yourself honestly. Like, you know, maybe you've applied for a job somewhere or something, right? And you always get that one and it's always like honest or something like that, or integrity, you know, whatever Enron had on the walls before the feds went in and shut them down. Like, you know, the word, holy shit, there's a hand back there with the cat. I was like, what is that? That blew my mind just now.
I thought it was
okay. Yeah. So the word, like, honestly, I did think about that over time. You know, when you start looking at what words actually mean to people and you come up with a brand mantra, or you come up with a realistic vision for a company or something like that, you can understand the value and what people want to take away from that. So for me, the one word that I always came back to is resourceful.
Right.
Like, that's just, you know, whether it's a resource for someone, whether it's always having multiple plans of action, those kind of things, being prepared for worst case scenario a la now. Right. And then having companies actually leverage that mindset and say, hey, can you help us try and figure this out in case this happens? I was like, you mean when this happens?
Right. Exactly.
Like, the inevitability is that, do you really think things are going to continue to move up and to the right indefinitely? No. Like, we know better.
But dude, so many people did. I mean, think about how many people were really just kind of, and it's not to knock them, because the natural human tendency is to want to believe that things are going to be all right.
Sure.
Once you kind of have a grasp on how the world is and how it works and your relation to it, your brain just goes into autopilot, you know, and sadly, we had made a habit over the past 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, since 2000, we've made a habit as a culture of making these very short-sighted changes in our own lives and our businesses and things. And sadly, a lot of people really didn't appreciate that, look, this could not continue in that way. Now, a lot of people will say, well, but coronavirus. It's like, yeah, but you also didn't appreciate that we were reaching a point globally in terms of the economy, in terms of this stress, this stress that existed between the world that wanted to be and the world that was, and the inevitability of a collapse at a global scale of some kind. So I actually kind of think it's a blessing in a way that we're being forced to realize all these things at once so quickly, so acutely, as opposed to over time where we can trick ourselves into thinking that, you know, the world will ever be as it was.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I could have done with less mayhem and death, like across the board, for this ravaging X amount of the population, which we still don't know yet, which, you know, but economic depression can do that as well. Like, that's the thing. Like, this could come in any form. It just so happened to come in a viral form, which, you know, it's the silent killer. It's one of those things, like, look, this is not the first pandemic the world has seen. This will not be the last one. What I would like to think is that people take health more seriously in the conversation, especially in the United States, where it's always, when someone says, hey man, how you doing? They are not asking about your health well-being, like your physical well-being. They are asking about your financial well-being.
Right.
100%. That's what that question is. Hey man, you doing good in the market? They might as well say, hey man, you poor yet? Like, that's the thing that's what they're actually asking. You know?
In tuna?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, look, dude. Yeah, by the by, that's been the meal of champions for many, many people at various stages of their life. It's, again, not always up and to the right. You may
Alibaba on ramen and tuna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, straight up. I mean, he's one of the wealthiest people on the planet, and yeah, he just donated a shitload of health supplies to a lot of different countries,
right,
to try and help people out here. I mean, it's weird. We talk about this. One of the unique things that come out of it. I've never seen a public address from the U.S. Surgeon General ever in my life. I'm 37. Until yesterday when I saw the video of how to make a mask out of a T-shirt, and I was like, wow. Like, that is oddly unique. Like, one, I had bandanas and stuff here, so I'm just going to look like I'm robbing a train. I contemplated wearing one at the start of this just now, just because why not? But I'm also in my home right now.
I'm pretty sure that's like illegal. You can't wear masks as such in public, right?
Until that's definitely cause for alarm usually, but now, like, it's pressing concerns here, and just the lack of understanding, and of course there's the fear about it, and people want to take action, right? They want to do something, and so this is something, right? Is there any harm to someone covering their mouth when they're in public? Probably not. I mean, whether it's coronavirus, whether it's flu season, where they have a fucking cold, like, it's whatever. It's probably not a bad thing, right, to be honest. Because we talk about the American culture here, and people just buying into a lot of different things. And one of the ones that I find, especially in corporate America, is just work when you're sick. It's a badge of honor. Every company I've ever worked for, food service is the worst about it, by the way. Like, they legitimately don't care if you're sick and you come in and prepare food for people. Like, I'm so sorry.
They're always operating on, skeleton crews to begin with,
For sure. Yeah. I mean, look, their business model is shaky at best, as we can see now, where, which sucks because, like, I grew up in food service, man. There's a lot of really nice people that work in food service. Don't get me wrong. But the business model itself, if you analyze the business model, is not a sound one. Like, it can't weather things like this at all, unless the majority of your business is through a drive-through or something. You see the ones that are thriving now, Chick-fil-A, which, what did they do? Embrace technology years ago, and now they're better set up than anyone else is to continue to serve their communities during this.
Speaking of technology, guess who invented the drive-through?
You know what? I don't know.
Liquor stores.
Really?
For real.
Huh. Wow.
I don't know that to be true, but I was told that, and I wanted to believe it, and I did. And now,
you know what? I'm going to go with it because I don't know any better right now. I feel like it was like McDonald's, but that was also like as the drive-in kind of thing, right? Like, it was a thing to eat the food there, and at some point it shifted to I want to take it and not be here. But I mean, the liquor store thing makes total sense, right? Because, hey, just grab your bag and go, right? I mean, you can still do that. They still have brew-throughs in New Orleans. Like, that's still in Louisiana, actually. They're just a state. Like, basically, if the straw isn't in it, you can't be popped for a DUI, which is insane. Considering I can take the lid off and drink it, but, that thin piece of plastic is the line, literally.
Well, I think what's probably one of the most amazing things is when you take a step back, because certainly with the people that I'm working with and a lot of the conversations I'm having with folks, it's about, I understand that the world is crazy right now, but whether or not this thing is, another month or 2 months or 3 months long in terms of the actual, we'll say, the reaching of the apex and an appreciation actually in the downward direction. And then, of course, the actual economic recovery could be a month, a year, 2 years, whatever that is. We know that it's going to end. It's going to shift into something else. And that if you're in a business, you've got to be thinking to yourself, okay, great. Well, what is that world going to look like? And how can I intersect it in a way that's going to benefit me? Right. But hey, listen, how do you get benefit as a business? How do you build value as a business? By delivering value to consumers. So it's really kind of this question of what are people going to want? What are they going to spend money on? What are they not going to spend money on? What things are going to change in terms of technology, in terms of the law, right? That are going to facilitate all sorts of different kinds of changes in behavior. I mean, those are some, to me, super interesting questions. I think we need to be asking more right now, as opposed to how can I get some of that government paper? Government paper is important, right? Everybody wants a little bit of that. Sure. But if it's just kind of my word to the wise, if you're planning on surviving this or weathering this storm, things like, things that I'm hearing a lot, and you expect the world to return to the way it was before, that is a recipe for disaster. I mean, you're borrowing money just to delay the inevitable.
Yeah, this is to me, the proverbial rock in a hard place, because you can't imagine how many people are affected, how many people want food service employees. If you look on a state by state level, like ironically enough, the majority of U.S. states, the number one employer for non-college educated people is trucking. It's trucking industry. It's logistics, but specifically people that do long haul trucking.
Right.
Okay. The second thing is fast food, generally in most states, or food service in general, right? Hospitality or something. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a degree and be in hospitality, but what it means is that there's a lot of human labor that goes into fast food, especially right now, which is probably going to be automated out. Like they're going to use this for that, because if I'm Wendy's, if I'm McDonald's, they're already going down those roads right now, by the way. They just didn't know a way to approach it.
Oh, we talked about this, probably a year ago, because I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was an automation engineer at Emerson, and you being in the whole, me not being in the advanced automation, artificial intelligence world, but certainly, as a layman attempting to understand it and appreciate it, right? He tells me, he says, we already know who we're going to replace with what technology. We're just waiting on the economic impetus to do it. And I just blew my mind, right? And that was a little over a year ago. And I remember we talked about that. And so what you're alluding to now is, do we want that to happen? Do we want people to be without jobs? No, that's not what this is about. But hey, there's a pending reality shift here.
Sure. And, it's ironic to me that during, when politicking was happening recently, one of the candidates was Andrew Yang. And the reason why that if Andrew Yang would have got the nod, I would have voted for him, is that he was addressing two things. One, the very human impact of what automation is going to do, and an actual attempt to address that by providing U.S. version of UBI. They rebranded it to the Freedom Dividend a little too late. Then it started to get traction because it has the word freedom in it. And apparently that's all you have to say to get people's attention here. But the reality is, what the government is currently doing right now, the check that's coming to everyone is literally that. Yeah. And everyone's all of a sudden on board with it by force, right? Before they're like, no, this will never work. And now it's literally the thing they're doing.
Right.
Because there's no other alternative for this. And the sustainability of that is, in Yang's mind, the way that he saw it, I was like, look, that is sustainable. But it requires the U.S. government to change the way that they approach business here, and who pays for what, 100%. Like if it's on the American taxpayer right now to fund this, hell no. There's no way in hell. I
think to your point, with Yang's plan, it kind of assumes that we as a country are tackling a transition together with some with awareness and strategy. This is not that. This is us keeping the peace by sending out checks to people, right? And not having, quite frankly, the hard conversation that we're having right now with a fireplace and a cat in the background, which is very hard to take seriously, right? Like
I like to think it softens the blow a little bit, but that's just me.
But in reality, people are not being told that you've got to shift your mindset. That transition is here. The mass proliferation of automation and artificial intelligence, that dawn is breaking. It's here. And we're not talking about 15, 20, 50 years, right? We're talking about 5 and 10. And I think that's the most amazing part. So when you look into the future with your business model, with what you know about technology, without looking into the just immediate future about how people can maybe take advantage of, say, virtual technologies and things like that, facilitate a transition, what do you see 5 years from now? What do you see 10 years from now?
Yeah, so that's such an interesting question, because I definitely have my personal opinion, and spoiler alert, this is what it's going to be. I have no crystal ball. You can exclamation point, remind me in a year if you're on Reddit or whatever, and come back and see that I may be completely wrong. That being said, here we go. The reality is, altered reality. Let's go with that. VR, MR, AR. So virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality. I just call them all altered, right? Because it's altering actual reality to some degree, right? All of those things have a place in business now, and they are being expedited to the front because, look, the robot thing here, automating that, the full automation of that, where you need that to be where it can be sentient enough to solve problems, isn't available in mass right now. Amazon couldn't do this if they wanted to. It's not quite there yet. But in integration with someone wearing a HTC Vive headset with wands like I have over here in the corner at home, that, or an AR apparatus like a Magic Leap Wand, something like that, right? Where they can interact with a system, and on the other end, there's robotics. When they say, here, pick this thing up, it goes and picks that thing up. A virtual fulfillment center is what SAP has been started with Amazon 2 years ago, minimum, right? It may be even longer than that. Basically, when we started prototyping our concept, SAP also had a prototype that was launching in warehouses for people to wear AR glasses for what they were then and interact, which was like the Microsoft HoloLens, and interact with an automated set of arms in a fulfillment center that was just like picking things up, putting them on a line, picking things up, putting them on a line. And so now, if you have this set up properly, you can have one person managing multiple robots. So for me, it's, are there going to be less humans doing jobs in a fulfillment center? Absolutely. Anyone that believes otherwise is going to be in for a rude awakening there. But the reality is, it doesn't replace the human element entirely. You can't. Like that's it. There's no value in that long term for any business to replace the humans. Like that's, I find a lot of people that are in kind of the doomsday thing, they struggle with that. They're like, well, we get rid of all the humans. It's like, if you get rid of human income, then you don't make any profits. Like, there's no way for you to make money. There's not enough B2B business in the world to make that happen. You need consumer. Like, that's just the reality of it. So you can't displace an entire workforce and just say, okay, we'll just get the money from somewhere else. Not that there aren't people that are blind to this, right? But that's a small percentage of who's working on it. The people that are actually designing this, they're right to be fearful of it because it can be abused, just like a weapon. Because that's kind of the way that I look at this. It can be abused, like automation, virtualization. Look, we've been virtualizing shit for a long time. Servers fully virtualized, Amazon AWS, Google's cloud, iCloud, Microsoft Azure, like all these things. These have accelerated business because it allows you to do more with essentially less to some degree, right? Less physical anyways.
Right.
But the reality is that hasn't displaced a lot of human workers. But right now, we are virtualizing hardware. The hardware then becomes the human that's doing that, right? Can we get to that point where we can automate those human tasks, that decision-making? That's the real struggle here, where you'll find plenty of support on both sides of the fence saying no and yes, it isn't feasible, right? I don't know what the answer is to that. I think from us, when I look at our business model, like ours doesn't exist currently. There's no amount of tweaks I can make to ours right now that makes us do what we would have done had we launched and people would have been able to gather. Like ours is fundamentally different because most gaming companies have infrastructure for this already. You can see they're up and to the right growth for the past 30 years. They've been building on this, but that has reached, to your point, there is a point of saturation, the law of diffusion of innovation. Right. For those that haven't seen it, it's a fucking curve that goes up and then back down. And the reality is you get to a point with the laggards. And right now, I think that's what we're entering with this right here. We're talking about people being forced to accept this, right? The laggards are now on board. But the laggard portion, which is only supposed to be 8% or so, was actually like 30%.
Oh, dude, it has to be more than that.
The ratios are off on the usual the usual scale, right, of the law of diffusion. It's just the numbers are different than what you would normally expect. And the reality is innovation has to come along again. And I'm not sure what form that takes, because to me, virtualization isn't necessarily innovation as much as it is iteration upon something.
Right.
Like,
that's a huge sore point for me. I mean, and I feel like it's impossible that I've had a conversation with anybody in depth that hasn't been a sticking point for me. Is this, we we're constantly propping up things that are only iteration. They're at best an evolution of something we're just very familiar and comfortable with, right? And we're calling it innovation because we like these words. I think you were the one who told me, you said, this killed me. I thought this was hilarious. You're like, I missed the boat. I should have been in the vinyl lettering business for mission and vision statements. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Well, because that's hilarious to me.
Sure.
Yeah, because people are so stuck on what they want to see and not what is. And innovation has to come from a fresh place, a fresh perspective. No sacred cows, basically, right? Sure. That being the rule. And it's not a negative statement. It's not that I don't believe in humanity or whatever. I think that we're capable of a lot, but our tendency, nostalgia, right? Our tendency is to want to bring with us into the future the things that make us feel safe, comfortable, secure, right? Validated, etc. And people aren't going to shed those things so readily in favor of true novelty.
Yeah, I think what I believe we'll see, and I actually made a note here earlier from something that you said, is what people value and the way they see themselves in the world, right, and their place in it. And I think let's talk about the core value of a person. Like what do they actually believe, right? What actions do they take? Not what they say, not what they tell you. What actions do they actually take? Because right now you're seeing that being forced to the forefront. Like that is being thrust upon people, and the restructuring of that is happening right now by force. That's outside of anyone's control. But to me, because I like to break things down into threes, it's easier to remember. And realistically, I think these are always the three things that people are at, like in a human society, right? Mm-hmm. So you have your health, your physical health, right? Which has always been number 3 in the US. Since I've been cognizant, it's always been number 3. If you don't believe that, I'm obese, by the way. It's less bad than it was a year and a half ago, and I'm moving it in the right direction now, but I'm textbook definition of that shit. I did not prioritize my health over financial solvency and or social status. Right. Like financial solvency was number 1 because of X amount of responsibilities there. And social status, honestly, is like, I still want to have friends. I still want to go out. I still want to do these things. And I don't want to look like I'm incapable, right? So the validation that you talked about before. And so generally when you prioritize those two things, it leaves very little time for health. Like, and most people is because you commonly hear, oh, I just don't have time to go to the gym. Fucking make time. Like obviously you can't go to the gym now, but you know what you can do? Pop down on the floor and bang out some push-ups. Right. Like there's a floor everywhere. I promise. Everybody's got a floor. And that's legitimately what I'm doing daily now, on top of a couple other things, just because there is no gym to go to. I mean, it's there, but I can't go to it, right? No one can go to it. It's not safe. I mean, gyms are bastions of disease to begin with for the most part. Like there's just not enough spray bottles in the world to resolve that. Like, and even what it is,
willing to use them consistently.
Yeah, exactly. That's just a stigma thing there. And it'll be interesting to see once people can congregate again in a gym, is that now the priority? Because my expectation is that it is.
About that, because I think it's a great example of ways that the world's going to change, right? You kind of play that logic game, that if people have figured out that they can have a satisfying workout at home, right? And if they don't have to drive to the gym, and they don't have to pay $59 a month, and they don't have to wait in line, and are they going to?
Right. I think but it comes back to those 3, right? Where it becomes to where they truly value health in that. Have they recalibrated those 3 things, right? Or does social status creep back to the top again? Because financial solvency and social status are so intrinsically related in American culture. Like when people say, hey man, what do you do? You answer with your job.
True.
100% of the time. And we're certainly not the first people to say that, but that's just the reality of it. It's like every Tech After 5 that I go and I meet new people at, every first Friday that I go and meet 2 people at, when they say, hey man, what do you do? They're not asking like, hey man, this is how I bring the world together. This is how I'm impacting people around me in a positive way or anything. They want to know what I do to pay my bills.
Right.
But if you had to say it like that, no one would say it. Right. So it adapted that over time, but that's how hey, it is their number 1 concern for any new person that they meet is this person financially solvent? And then I'm going to base their value based on that alone.
Right.
I don't care if they're unhealthy, which was the stigma before, and then I'm going to determine their social status entirely on my own based on factor number one, social solvency,
Right.
or financial solvency rather.
Right.
And it's just, from my hope is that you see health become the number one thing. Financial solvency is still important. That's number two. And then social status, because the amount of people I see now that are just like, no haircut, and just, you know, they're skipping some showers and things like that. Like, I feel like social status is going to fundamentally change, you know, for the slew of people that were making a living being pretty on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat or whatever. This is a weird world for them to live in. And I think it's going to be eye-opening for a lot of those folks.
I hope that people are going to realize how distracted they were. They're going to realize how much of a priority they placed on distraction. I think the distraction economy is enjoying a big boom right now, but that people are having to come to terms with themselves, right? Who am I as a human being? I've always said, like, if I have a past, actually talking to my sister earlier today, if I had like a past life regression, I don't want to be the guy who had like 10 amazing iterations of life. No, I want to be the guy that was just a normal jackwagon the whole way through, all 30 times. You know what I mean? Totally satisfactory to me. I don't need to be more than who I am in order to be somebody. I mean, you know, but that is the tendency. And I'm hoping that we can get back to that place where people are like, you know what, I'm a human and that's enough. I don't need to expend energy trying to get the rest of the world to believe something about me that I don't even necessarily believe about myself.
Sure. But I mean, that's the way the tools are designed, though. They're designed to deliver the highlight reel, right? Everything is great, but the overwhelming reality of it now is that the Diet Coke effect has come full circle now. You know that this is fake. Right. And now you're trapped by yourself with those thoughts, and you have to take action in order to have that communication again. And I think that's the most frightening thing at all, is that before the system basically prompted you to interact. Like, they're designed, Facebook and Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, are designed to keep your eyeballs on it, to using it multiple times a day, to keep you on the treadmill, right? On their treadmill specifically. Right. And hardware companies do this. You know, Apple does this very, very well as well. Microsoft does their own. Google definitely does theirs. Even Twitter, but Facebook's the most invasive about it, through Instagram, really. I don't do TikTok, so I don't know. TikTok's the new Vine, whatever. I had no interest in Vine. I have no interest in TikTok. It's fine if you do. I don't care. Right. LinkedIn is the interesting front right now, I think, where it is going through a serious state of identity crisis here.
Oh,
because the state of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things, because I use LinkedIn more than anything else just to watch people and watch conversations, and sure. You know, I've had kind of conducted these personal social experiments on LinkedIn, right? Mm-hmm. You know, you can see an idea kind of beginning to form, and then you can see it. I mean, I hate to use this analogy, but like a virus spreading, and then people kind of unwittingly just parroting things, and I don't think people appreciate that. You know, parroting is not just about saying what you've heard. Right? It's kind of reflexively regurgitating not only the words, but the behaviors that you see around you, because it's the fastest way to signal belonging to the rest of the herd, you know? And I would hope that people appreciate now, you do not want to be going in the direction of the herd, because the herd has no leader. It has no idea where the hell it's heading, right? Now's the time that people have to begin to wake up, finally, hopefully begin to self-actualize a little bit. Maybe this virus, as terrible as it is, right? Maybe this economic downturn, as terrible and as difficult as it is, provides people with an opportunity to, I guess, awaken.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate term here. I think for me, I look at it like this, because I'm a huge fan of this word, which has a very negative connotation, especially in the business world, but audit, right? And I can't say that I took this, I actually learned this from Gary Vee years ago, of self-auditing your time. How are you spending your time? Because a question I commonly got while developing Reforged Gaming Lounge and building that and working on that, I'm also working full time there. And the question constantly that came up was like, how are you finding the time for this? Like, this is found money or something. Like, I'm just walking along and I find 30 minutes on the ground or something, right? And then I was like, oh, I got a free 30 minutes. What do I do with it? Like, I get more hours in a day somehow than you do. No, I promise it's not that. But if I sit down, and by the way, if you have an iPhone right now, it does a really good job of this. There's your daily usage, your weekly usage in there. It's broken down in how you use that device, which is handy because most people's interaction with the world is now handled through a device that's in their pocket or in their hand right now, probably right now, actually.
Right.
But the reality is you can see that and you're like, man, I spent 5 hours on entertainment yesterday. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I get it. Right now, like, you're at home, you got YouTube in the background, whatever, and it doesn't specifically state exactly what it is. It shows you the app that you're using. So it requires a little bit on yourself. Look, if I'm spending 5 hours a day on Netflix, suffice to say that if I carve 2 hours out of that every week, I now have 8 hours, a full day that I can put into something that I'm passionate about, interested in. And then within a couple of months, I have now sank a couple of weeks into this to see if this is the reality that I want to explore or not. Is this something? You don't necessarily have to put in money in the beginning, but you do have to put in the time to see if it's worth putting some money into. I think more people should put some money into things that to see if it'll work for them, because then there's a level of commitment. There's the chance of loss. And that always is like, there's no buy-in. If there's no buy-in for anyone there, they don't care. They're just like, whatever. Like, to me, talking to friends or whatever, I use Stock Market, perfect example. There's all these awesome apps that exist now. There's Acorns, there's Stash, there's others than that. But those are like the top two that come to my mind. You can fully automate this thing, man. It'll just draw whatever dollars and put it into whatever you want every week for you. And it'll just give you a report. Hey, man, here's your investment in Berkshire Hathaway. Here's your investment in Apple. Here's your investment to all these ETFs that you're interested in, like Social Media Mania or whatever. If you want a little bit small pieces of all these social media things that are popping up. And their focus is education, education, education. But the reality is so many people won't take the action there to actually do that. They won't download the app. They won't set up the first time thing. And so they end up not getting what they want out of this.
Well, and I wonder, I think too, it's about, because I ask people, I say, I know you want to invest a little bit of time in this or time in that, but man, maybe appreciate that the social validation that your subconscious mind believed was going to come from engaging in that activity, right? The reward that was out there, it's maybe that doesn't exist. And maybe you were never really interested in that thing at all. I think that's going to be a rude awakening for a lot of people is, what am I really interested in? What am I really passionate about? What really sets me apart? What makes me unique as a human being? What's my contribution to the world going to be? Before, I think people took it for granted that, I call it the market validation problem, right? It's like, well, because this is a phenomenon that I see controlling so many people's decisions, especially right now, which is that I'm not going to engage in a new behavior either in the market, or I'm not going to engage a new idea. I'm not going to engage anything if I can't detect that it's already earning for the people who are exhibiting that idea or behavior, whatever. It's not getting them validation. If I can't see a shortcut to validation by engaging in an idea or behavior, I'm not going to do it. And that's not a conscious thought. It goes on in the background. It processes out certain opportunities, certainly novelty, before anybody ever has the chance to engage. And you need space, you need quiet time. You need, by the way, to be starved of the opportunity to be validated immediately by your peers and your coworkers and your family to be able to see things like that.
Sure. And I mean, full circle for me with, hey, how'd you find the time? How you doing this? Is like, well, look, we do the audit and I say, okay, I'm going to take time away from these things. For me, it was as much game time as I was spending to keep in touch with friends around the world, because that's how we connect now. If they're in Australia or they're in Virginia or they're in Wisconsin, we can't go meet up at the bar, right? Which I know now that sounds like, something that I made up. But the reality is the thing you would do in your local community there where you could go grab coffee or dinner or drinks or whatever doesn't exist and hasn't existed for a long time for that group of people that are still good friends of mine. So how do we do this? Well, we all pick a game and then we learn the game together. and then we go on whatever adventure, or we compete against other things or whatever. And that's the reality of it. So for me, I'm like, okay, that's fun. There's validation to it. It's continuing relationships here, but maybe I can even take an hour or two a week out of that and put it into this thing that allows me to do that for my local community at first, and then a larger community as a whole, because that's really what I've been doing this entire time on a very small scale. Could I scale that idea into a business, which would allow me to reach more people? But you have to generate profits in order to fuel that, right? That's the reality of it. Otherwise, it just stays this idea that I would never have known. So first I put in the time, then I put in the money, and then we're so close to the point, or we're so close to the point, and now I still believe we'll be able to do what we can do. I just honestly I don't know. The timeline has basically been shattered. Obviously, we're making a few tweaks to things as much as we can, but the reality is, I would have never found out those things without auditing the time and then actually taking action on it. Like, you can't think about doing push-ups, okay? You get no results from that. You can't talk about doing push-ups. You will not get any better at doing push-ups. I promise. Trust me. I've done it before. I've watched fucking videos plenty of times, all this stuff. I'm going to start tomorrow. And I just never did until literally last week. And I've had a floor the entire time. Like, it's 100% on me. I had no shortage of equipment. I've had me, and I've had a floor, and that's all you need. And I just didn't do it until, 2 weeks ago. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it every day. And, we'll see what happens with it.
Right.
Like, I legitimately right now make sure that I put in 7 minutes every day, which is not a lot of exercise time. That's going to increase
7 minutes.
Right. I mean, it's high intensity interval training, so it's a whole thing. But eventually, you add more to it. But you have to begin to see if it's something you're even interested in. Maybe this program, maybe I won't like it long term. But I couldn't just sit there and think about, well, I don't know, I probably won't like that without actually putting in a little bit of time and effort to it. Right, and that's what it is. So I bought a yoga mat because I was like, hey, man, some of these things, I'm doing this on a concrete slab outside, and I don't want to get grass stains on me. Let's compromise here. So I invested $9 so far. It's decent, right? But that's literally real-world example scope of this, of something that, hey, I'm in a situation that I didn't necessarily want to be in. Everyone's been handed lemons before. The resourcefulness that I talked about earlier, hey, man, I got to make lemonade somehow. I got to make this palatable, right? Everyone's facing this right now.
And they are. And we just got about a minute left, and then I have to shift in. I have Josh Watts from MedTrust Medical Transport joining me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Good
Awesome.
guy. Have you ever met Josh?
I haven't, I don't think.
He's a good dude. I'm almost sure I've told him to hook up with you because I really, the business he's in for sure, has a big shift towards technology coming, and not that Josh is not aware of that. I think Josh has probably been a leader in his industry in terms of integrating technology, but so where is Reforged Gaming going next? Now, what do you think about the future? Give everybody kind of a rundown real quick.
Sure. So what we're doing now is we're leveraging our Discord server very heavily. If you're on Discord and if you're in the gaming world, you know what that is. And if you don't, Discord, much like Zoom, is kind of the communication platform that gamers prefer over anything else. It has video chat integration, those kind of things, but also because of the technology behind it, live streaming built into it as well. So we can actually stream games and other content amongst groups of people there. It doesn't really matter, just stream it. So that's how we're keeping our community together right now, engaged. We're just playing games together virtually, obviously, because that's all we can do. The conversion of that comes when it's safe for people to congregate again. We get our place, we build it out, and we let people come back in and start doing their thing to fulfill the start of this, which we bring them together now. We get them to know one another. And then, much like you've shown me before in the model, you delight, right? You bring them in together. And it's like, oh, man, this is exactly what I wanted. And because it's been taken away from them now, it's probably compounded, right?
Yeah, that frustration is high ranking. And you talk about a point of intersection is making available that kind of an opportunity at the point where that frustration is at its zenith. I mean, that's where the maximum impact is going to be. And, you are so intelligently positioned in that. And you're not one of these people, one of the things I've respected about you more than any other is that you're forward looking, you're patient, you know your time is coming, and you take the necessary steps as you see them, as you see the opportunity to take them appear. Whereas most people, if they can't get that reward today or next week or at least this month, worst case scenario, right, then they're not going to do it. And you've been playing the long game here, and I think it's going to pay off big for you, man. One last question. Everybody wants to know the answer to: how close are we to the Safe Love app from Judge Dredd?
The Safe Love app from Judge Dredd. My God. I'm going to be honest here. In the world that we live in now, I would say that probably exists on a not forward-facing scale yet.
Right.
But, just technology is moved forward by a lot of different industries, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. I would say it's much closer than you think.
God, okay. Well, it's certainly being tried out in China by old lonely men. We know that. So
Sure.
Japan's the one, right?
Japan's the one. I don't know. Maybe China too. I don't know. I don't presume to understand those cultures on a level other than what I've experienced with them from a distance.
Right. All right, man. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate you coming on today. I had a lot of fun. And
yeah, for sure.
We should do this again this week sometime.
Yeah, I'm super down, man. Always a pleasure, Boyd.
You're both. Bye.
Super down.